Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Natter with Nilan. Today, I'm speaking with the editor, Jim Page, and here he is now. Welcome to my channel. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
That's okay.
Um,
Thank you for inviting me.
you're very welcome. First things first, how are you? I know it's crazy times we're living in, but I think that question is more important than ever. How have things been going with you?
Fine. I mean, in a funny kind of way, being an editor, I'm sort of used to being isolated in a room, so it's not all that different. I think the difference has been kind of obviously less work, and those opportunities to kind of actually physically be in the room with people have been really restricted. And in a funny kind of way, the lockdown has given me an opportunity to reassess things a little bit, I think, in terms of what I want to do and how I want to move forward. But it's also showed me how important those moments I do get with other people are, I think. So I think maybe a lot of people are thinking that.
Yeah, definitely. No, so it's a funny time, and I think when the lockdown first happened, I think a lot of people in the industry weren't quite sure what was going on. Like everything got shut down. Um, Obviously, there wasn't any imminent announcements about what is going to happen to film and TV. I think a lot of people were panicking, and yeah, obviously as the months rolled on, it became very clear how important film and TV was. So I think
Yeah.
they made it a priority to get that back, and obviously through subsequent lockdowns, they haven't changed that. Luckily, film and TV could sort of still carry on.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think not. I mean, a lot of the film and TV industry has been sort of a part of that. What are they called? I can't remember what the phrase they use, but there's a certain number of people who, because of the way their taxes or their accounts are structured, because they're not paid by PAYE, they're excluded. That's it.
Oh,
The
you're
excluded
excluded.
group. Um, and I've definitely been one of those people. I haven't been able to claim any support from the government, and so it's been, it's been difficult. It's been difficult. I've managed to keep working on certain little things, but it's been difficult.
Yeah, no, I know it's incredibly hard for lots of people. I'm not quite sure what this year has in store for all of us, but hopefully things are going to get a lot better, a lot quicker.
You can only
Um,
hope.
yeah, the one thing that I think loads of people have been doing over lockdown is having conversations like this over Zoom. And I think whether people like it or not, it's something that you know a lot of people are doing. And I felt that through the BFI network live webinars that we were doing, um, a lot of people were talking about a lot of topics, and yeah, I really wanted to get involved with that myself and start speaking to people and finding out their stories and giving them a chance to voice their journeys and how they do what they do, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking at this industry before the first lockdown started as a place where they want to go to, as a place that they'd like to work in. And I don't know what it was, but it seemed like when the lockdown happened, a lot of aspiring people sort of got scared away from it. I think there was a lot, to be fair, I think there was a lot of scaremongering, and people were saying that forget film and TV, forget this sort of freelance world, like it's not going to be back to what it was for a few years. So you're going to have to go into other industries and more secure jobs. And I was seeing a lot of that online, and that felt pretty bad, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I think there's it's sort of the two sides of it, really. I think is that one side is that, yeah, I mean, the reality is that there is less work, particularly for people starting the industry. I know people who are runners and assistants who've lost their jobs because there's just not enough for them to do. Because if you work in a facility where you normally have hundreds of people coming in every day, if all of those people are working remotely, you don't need as many in-house people, or studio-based stuff. People don't need audience coordinators anymore because there's no audience to coordinate. So I can understand that. And also just like freelance life, this has shown how precarious it can be, because you have no safety net, and it's only taken something like this for the whole thing to sort of become like a house of cards, really.
yeah,
And the few people I know who've got staff jobs, who perhaps previously were sort of bemoaning maybe their lack of variety or lack of career, now they're they're thanking their lucky stars, because it's, you know, it's a godsend. But hopefully, now that things are start moving again and people are able to kind of keep going, I know for myself from hearing things, there's more productions happening. Things are happening more slowly, perhaps. Things are more difficult to get made. But I think once, you know, let's assume that the whole vaccination thing happens and works well. Once we've got to that point where everyone's vaccinated and we eventually basically just treat it like the flu every year, we get a COVID shot every year,
Yeah.
and you know, eventually we'll be able to move on with our lives. But I think we're not there yet, are we? So
Not quite. It feels like we are getting there though. Speaking of the starts of careers, how did you get into editing? What was it about post-production that drew you to it?
well, it's I'll try and be brief because it's a sort of long story. But basically, I went to college, but before I went to college, I left school early because I had mental health problems. I had quite severe depression, and I left school originally kind of, I was a straight A student, you know, had a good career, good kind of future ahead of me, and then everything sort of collapsed. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had no kind of direction. I got a part-time job in a service station, and someone I knew from that was going to do a media course, and I thought, well, you know, I like films. I've always loved films. You know, I'd previously thought about being a writer or whatever, but I thought I'll go along and do it because I'm not doing anything else at the moment. And the course I did was quite revelatory, really, to me, because not only did it show me, you know, all the different parts and roles that can take place, the thing that I really gravitated to, which was editing, showed me kind of that I could have a life of telling stories, being creative, and also being kind of techie and geeky, which is a part of being, you know, an editor. And it kind of helped open my horizons to new things, new films that I'd never thought existed, and all sorts of different things, really. So from there, when we were at college, we made a bunch of little short films. But one of the major things we did was we made a feature film, a student feature film, which won a Royal TV Society Award.
Wow.
And it's a terrible film, and I'll never show it to anybody. But
Well, congratulations anyway. Let me get that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for what it was, it's fine. You know, you know, I think it was a really great achievement for all of us, and it was a huge baptism of fire. But I edited the film, and that's when I really got to grips and understood, you know, the power and the joy of doing it, and, you know, being able to play with footage. You know, I shot a lot of stuff, and, you know, the process of being on set was quite stressful and quite. Often you were just sort of trying to get what you could get, but editing, I felt like you had time to play with it and work things out, and time to think, and it was great. And so that's sort of the area I sort of saw myself sort of going into at that point. Then that got me a job as an assistant at the BBC in Birmingham. So I worked on things like Country File and daytime TV shows and that kind of thing. And I was only there for about 6 months before I decided to just start editing, really. So I started doing like short films, like really bad short films for not very good filmmakers. I started doing really bad corporate films, and branded stuff. I did one job where I was living in the Midlands at the time, and there was a job in Battersea in London for an online lottery company. And basically what they needed someone to edit. They'd shoot the balls coming out of the machine and lining up, and then they needed someone to edit that together and upload it. And so because it was a job, I drove down from the Midlands in the middle of the night, edited it for about 20 minutes, and then drove back home. So in terms of an hourly rate, it wasn't that bad, but then when you consider the commute, it was a bit rubbish.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get as much experience as I could. You know, I didn't want to turn anything down, because,
Of course.
you know, I realized I was still sort of cutting my teeth and still needed to, you know, and just bit by bit, I was able to sort of, you know, try and build a career, I suppose.
Wow. That's quite a journey.
Literally was quite a journey down the M1.
Definitely. When you're starting out, you know, I remember what it was like. I started off as a runner, working on set for film and TV. when you're literally starting out, it is very much take what you can get. You know, little bits of work here or there, little bits of work here, little bits of work there, work experience here, there, shadowing people, all that sort of stuff, working for free, working for expenses. And when you get that first professional job or first professional credit, it feels like a massive achievement.
Absolutely.
What one was your first professional credit or first professional job that you would count as like?
Well, I did. I was doing short films, and I'd made a couple of short films that I'd put online, and I directed a couple of short films. And a filmmaker in London saw one of these and liked it, and invited me down. I was still living in the Midlands, and invited me down to London to meet with him. And I was so excited because, like, it was coming down to London, which to me had always been this kind of magical palace on the skyline. You know, this amazing place down in in the big smoke. And I was meeting him in Soho, and we were going to have a latte, and it was all kind of amazing, kind of what you imagine the media industry was going to be. So I met him, and we got on really well, and I started doing little corporate jobs for him because he was also a TV director, so he was doing sort of factual TV mostly. So some of the little jobs I did for him, I did some short films with him, but some of the little jobs I did for him were like behind the scenes documentaries on a Doctor Who DVD. So they re-released an episode of the Doctor Who from the 70s, and we do like a little behind the scenes documentary about it. And some of them were quite fun. But my first proper like job really was he was directing what they call the taster tape for a documentary. Taster tape was like a proof of concept, sort of mini version of the documentary, kind of like an extended trailer. And there was this guy called Ed Stafford, who was quite famous now, but this was his first thing, and he had decided to walk the length of the Amazon River. And he walked from, I think it was Bolivia to the beaches in Brazil. I think it was 7,000 miles, took him 2.5 years. He'd filmed it all himself, and so there were hundreds of hours of footage, and they wanted to see whether there was a documentary in this. And so he got me on board to edit the promo for it, and that got it commissioned. Based off that, they chose they had one very experienced documentary editor to edit it, and they wanted a second documentary editor because there was just so much to deal with. And the director, Mike Warner, decided, you know what, Jim's done this. He's really keen. You know, he's willing to learn and listen. And so they gave me the second editor role on it. And so my first proper TV job was this feature-length documentary. And it was a massive baptism of fire, and I made lots of mistakes, but like I'm very proud of it, and it's still one of the best things I think I've done. And so from there, I actually had a solid thing that I could show people and say, look, this has been on TV. Yeah. This is a thing that you may have heard of. You know, there was a book that was released alongside it. It won a few documentary awards. And so I was able to get signed with an agency who then started getting me little bits of work on factual TV, bits here and there. And it just sort of grew from there. Alongside that, I was also still doing short films with people. So I was building relationships with people, getting better and better. Because my heart was really in doing narrative stuff. I still love doing documentaries, but narrative is, when I was a kid watching, I watched, Jurassic Park or whatever. That's the sort of thing that you kind of want to do. So I was working my way up. So I've had sort of 2 or 3 different strands because I was also doing branded stuff for like Sony or Disney or whatever. So I've had multiple strands to what I was doing sort of moving forward, and all of it kind of helping me learn and getting better at everything. Then I moved to Plymouth for a little while because there was a TV company down there called 2-4, and they did a lot of documentaries and factual shows, and I just sort of worked continuously for them, again still doing short films. And then I moved back to London to kind of focus on doing narrative. I started doing features. I've done more and better shorts, and now I'm in a sort of position where I can be a bit more selective about things. Not completely, I still have to do things to pay the rent, but I can look at projects and go, you know what, I'm not going to spend my time doing that. I'm going to look, unless it pays me really well, I'm not going to look at that, because my time is one of my assets, and if I spend it doing
Absolutely.
that, then I'm not doing something else. So yeah, so that's sort of a potted history of my journey so far, I suppose. Was that even your question? I'm not even quite sure
Yeah,
now.
well, no, I mean, yeah, it was. I asked about sort of first credits and how that felt and how that came about and stuff.
Yeah.
And what I find is that the journey up to that first credit or the first professional thing that you did, it always feels very arduous, very difficult. I think that once you have your first credit, no matter how you got it, it feels like everything after that feels just slightly a bit more easier. Would you tend to agree?
I wouldn't agree with that, actually. No, I think. I mean, it's obviously very different for everybody, but I think I don't feel like there was much difference. It definitely helped in terms of like getting me seen, but I still had to do the work, and I still couldn't. Once I got the first credit, the second credit, I had to do well at that. You're only as good as your last job, and if you didn't do well, if I did 2 bad jobs, then I wouldn't get hired again, and so. And because I wanted to work in films, I was constantly working night and day to do stuff. I mean, there was suddenly more pride, because obviously you have done something that you can show people. But in terms of the industry behind it, even now, I mean, like I'm 15 years in, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the summit of where I want to be. And I'm today I was sending emails looking for work, and keeping in touch with people and seeing what's on the horizon. I think it's sort of being freelance, particularly, I think is a bit of an endless grind, really, and you just have to get used to not necessarily knowing where the next job is coming from, but being open to opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was a freelance runner right at the start of my career, it felt like I was doing whatever I could to get on set. And then when I was on set, it was, for me, the first day on set is always the best day. Everything's, wonderful, everything's amazing. And then after that, it just becomes a hard grind. And it feels like what everybody else on set is doing is looking for the next job. What's crewing up? What's the next thing that people are going to be filming? And they're trying to get onto that.
Yeah.
And then, so, when you're not working, you're spending all your time looking for work. And then when you are working, you're still looking over your shoulder, thinking, oh, what's next? What's next? And if you are creative, as you are, you do start to think, well, when do I get the time to pursue my own projects and my own
Yeah.
ambitions? And I think it's like a cautionary tale that the more you do off that, as in obviously try and get a career in this industry, I think the further into it you get, you realize that I do have to spend more of my time doing my stuff, and it is difficult. It is difficult to balance that. You mentioned obviously your work on short films. So I've just finished a stint working with BFI Network, who obviously focus on short films. How was working on short films for you? What was the process like? And can you tell us a bit about the projects that you worked on?
Well, I've done over 80 short films, so so I've done loads and loads of different things. Everything from like three-minute comedy sketches up to 25-minute kind of almost half-hour dramas, really. So, and they're all different. I've done a bunch of BFI funded ones as well.
Cool. Have you done any one
Some
of
of
those
them
recently?
I've just done one called Dirt,
Okay.
which is going to be, it's directed by Paul Preston, and it's just being mixed at the moment and graded, having some visual effects done. So just finished cutting that before Christmas. So I'm still doing, and I got paid very little for that, but I'm doing it because I wanted to work with Paul, and hopefully that will lead Paul and me along with him kind of in a positive direction. So I think the short films are sort of a means to an end, I think, for most people. I think they are. I've been paid well on maybe 2 or 3 short films in my life. The rest of them have either been unpaid or very low paid. And the trade-off there is that they're then done around your properly paid work. So you don't, you wouldn't spend 2 weeks working on a short film instead of working, doing a properly paid thing, because that would make no sense. But And so there's that sort of tacit understanding between directors and their crew that you're gonna there's equity in the experience, but you also have to be realistic about how these things are made. I think I've cut my teeth on short films, if you pardon the pun, but I think I've I'm very selective about what I do now, because not only does the script have to be right, you have to feel like the director and the producer are going to be on the way up. You also have to kind of think about the DP, because if the DP is not very experienced, then the film might not be that good looking, and that makes a big difference with short films. Well, all films, but short films in particular. So there's a lot of moving parts for you to then invest your time for not very much money or no money. So yeah, I mean, like I say, they're all different. Everyone's different, and I've learnt from every single one of them. Some of them I've been very proud of, some of them less so. But like I say, I've learnt. Last year, a short I did won best film at Tribeca.
Wow.
I've done short films that I've done. I've gone, to most of the festivals worldwide. One was BAFTA shortlisted a couple of years ago, and I know that short then. People have seen that short and sought me out because they really liked my work on it. So that's, there's a direct connection between that and several other projects that I've done. I have an agent now, and I know that was one of the projects that he saw that he really liked. So, like I say, there are means to an end, and you have to be strategic about both the film itself, but also your involvement in them, I think.
Definitely. One thing that I've always wanted to ask editors, specifically of short films, is obviously with short films, the writers, directors, producers, they tend to be, in the early stages of their career. When you're working with them, say going forward, you've got a short film coming up. If you could give them sort of advice or words of wisdom about what to do to make your life as the editor easier, or to also make the most out of you as an editor, are there things that they could do on set, in the shoot, or maybe even before that in development or in the writing stage, that gets the best out of you as an editor?
Well, I like to get involved as early as possible, really, because I think at this point I've done enough that I kind of know what you need, what you don't need, in terms of like script. So there's I had a long chat the other day with this is for a feature, but it applies to shorts, with a director about certain things that they were looking at shooting that I felt they didn't need, but they were missing other things. And so that meant they were able to rewrite the script a little bit to adjust it, and actually ended up saving themselves a bit of money because they didn't need to shoot as much of something. I think I'm a creative guy, and I have thoughts and ideas, and I think the best directors are the ones who can take ideas from everyone and kind of and unify those into one idea. The worst directors are the ones who just want you to do what they want, and that's it. And they always make the worst films because they're not taking advantage of the people around them. Even people that you might think are very dictatorial, like David Fincher or Steven Soderbergh, who've got complete control over everything, they massively rely on their collaborators to come up with ideas, to kind of advise them, to put options in front of them. And that's kind of what you've got to do. So I think directors need to be open and understand that it's a team sport. It's not it's not rhythm gymnastics. It's football. So there's that. I think practically speaking, it's always about getting options, really, being able to have the options to emphasize moments in the film. If you shoot a scene in 3 shots and you need to emphasize something someone's doing with their hand, unless you shoot that shot, you're not going to be able to do it. And so it's things like that, remembering the beats of the story and knowing how that translates to the edit. I think a lot of directors sort of should edit some stuff themselves, because then they will understand the process a little bit better and understand also what you might need and what you don't need. I like working alongside the shoot sometimes, so that whilst they're shooting, I was doing EastEnders before Christmas, and I was able to sort of say to the director, "Oh, I think we need to get this shot," and so, some of those things they were able to kind of pick up because I'd mentioned it. I was able to edit whilst they were shooting and say, "Oh, we need to get this," and they were able to pick up. And it's the same with features. It's difficult on the short because obviously it's a very small period of time, and often you're shooting in a location for a day or half a day, and you can't go back. But I think it's useful for a director to be able to see what they are. What they're producing as they go along, and they can adjust as they adjust, rather than it being this big, often horrible surprise to them at the end. But that's the main thing. Is I think directors need, the good directors understand that it's we're working together. It's not my part, your part. It's our part.
Definitely. There's a phrase to do with editing that a lot of people say, most of the time in jest, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, which is fix it in post. Oh, don't worry about that, we'll fix it in post. Is that something you've heard? And how do you feel about it? Do you look at it like, if there is a jumble of scenes, do you look at it and go, do you know what, okay, it's my job to stitch it all together and make it coherent? Or do you look at it and think, I wish that they would consider how it's going to be edited whilst in the shoot?
Both. Really, both. I think I've only really ever heard it as a joke. I think that's the truth. But ultimately, the edit is where the chickens come home to roost, and all the problems and all the things that weren't solved in the shoot or weren't done quite right have to kind of be quote unquote fixed. Most I think directors understand that when you're shooting, you're basically just generating material that you can then mold together when you're editing, and that's very true of documentaries. Documentaries can change, and dramas, but documentaries can change massively in the edit from what you imagined they were going to be, from scene to scene to the overall thing. But in terms of narrative stuff, I think the collective noun for editors is a whinge of editors, so a big group of editors, and so editors are prone to being a bit moany and a bit kind of put upon, I think, but that's because we are kind of the last point before really the audience, editorially, to kind of go, well, how is the audience going to see this? How are they going to react to this? And we're the ones who see all the problems and have to fix them. And so, yes, there is, to an extent, there is a certain amount of that. But I think, again, all the best people are the collaborative people. So it's not just, we're going to film this in secret and then dump it on your desk and you sort it out. Often I'll talk to DPs while they're shooting, sound people, Jim, what do you think about this? What, will this work? And then you can kind of get ahead of those issues beforehand. So ideally you don't have to, but I certainly have.
Yeah. Cool. You said something earlier that I want to quickly catch up on. Me and you have something in common in the sense that we've both worked on EastEnders. How was that for you? What was you did a block, right?
I've done 3 blocks now,
Three blocks. How was that? Did you edit footage shot from COVID times?
Yes, so it was during the COVID lockdown. So my first block I was editing mainly from home, remotely. And it was difficult because technically the technology wasn't quite right. It was a bit low resolution. It's difficult to kind of get the impression of the performances as well as I wanted to. And also there is an energy of going into a place, parking the car, going somewhere. Hi, John in security or whatever, walking into a place that kind of it motivates and encourages you. Whereas if you're working from home, one of the things I've always struggled with when working from home is it's like, well, that direction I've got my office where I've got all this work to do, but then over there is my TV and couch, and then back there is my bed. So which of those 3 options am I going to, so it's kind of making sure I do that kind of thing. But the second block I was more in the on site, on site. So yeah, they were shooting obviously around COVID regulations, and EastEnders did a curious thing, which is that that within the world of EastEnders, they've only really vaguely connected with COVID. So there's no lockdown in COVID in EastEnders.
They refer to it in scenes, but yeah.
Yeah, that occasionally you'll see someone wiping their hands, but everyone's still mixing. There's no mask being worn. Whereas in Coronation Street, whole scenes can take place and someone's got their mask on. So it's more of a representative of what's going on. So that decision was made, but of course, obviously, you can't film people more closer than 2 meters apart. So there's lots of camera tricks done.
Yeah.
Blocking long lenses. We were doing visual effects things where you would split screen people, so you'd film an actor there talking to a tennis ball, and then that actor talking to a tennis ball, and combine the two. So there's lots of that kind of stuff, which obviously made the production longer, the edit process a bit longer and more kind of difficult. But ultimately, it was still the same storytelling, and the idea is that you don't notice it anyway. So that was really, and yeah, I loved it and hope to go back, hopefully sometime this year. Once everything is calmed down, because I know now with this third lockdown, they've they're really tightened security up in terms of like who can be on the site and whatnot. So they're really minimising the number of people there. But I really enjoyed it.
That's cool. Because I've never really been involved in the post production of EastEnders. So when I was a runner there, we used to have to give out sort of like fruits and chocolates and biscuits to everyone on set. We'd go on set first, and then we'd go up to the galleries. And so yeah, I spoke to the guys in the galleries very briefly, but they were all really nice. And next to the galleries, the vision galleries, there was the sound galleries, and the guys were all vision mix and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, they always seemed pretty relaxed and pretty like they're really enjoying their work. And I just wanted to check whether you felt the same when you were there.
Whether they were lying to you, whether they were pretending, you mean?
Well, just that they sit like on set with EastEnders. It is very there's a lot to get through. There's a lot to get through in the day.
It's a relentless production pace. You're basically creating a feature film every 15 days.
It's incredibly impressive. You've got actors going from one stage to another constantly, and
the coordination is incredible. I don't know how they schedule it, because there's actors working on multiple scenes out of order per episode, and then multiple episodes. So it's all over the place, really, but they keep it working, and it's a huge machine. And part of going into something like EastEnders is fitting into that machine, I think. With shorts and features, you kind of almost create the mood, the atmosphere, the workflow yourself, whereas with something like that, you have to fit into it, and that was definitely a challenge. The way they work is slightly different to how I would prefer to work, but there's obviously reasons why it is working like that, and so it was up to me to kind of to fit that. But everyone was lovely, and like I say, I hope to go back.
Definitely. Obviously, you mentioned that you've done feature films as well. How was that process for you? Obviously, it's more footage to work with, more space, I suppose, to craft the narrative. Is that something that you'd like to do more of?
Yeah, I love doing features. I think the thing I love about it is that obviously there's the magic of doing a feature, even if it's released on TV directly now, because obviously the cinemas aren't open, but there's still that magic of like a feature film, a 90-minute film, 90-minute 2-hour film. You get this opportunity to tell kind of a story over a period of time, scenes building on scenes building, and yeah, I love being part of something that hopefully will live on longer than I will. People are still watching films from 100 years ago, and I would dearly love to be able to make something that in 100 years time people are still watching then, so hopefully I'll get to a point where I work on something like that. But I love the whole process of both assembling the rushes, working on the story, then sitting down with the director to work through the story and get things right, fixing the things that perhaps don't work, trying different options. I absolutely love it, and I've been lucky enough now to have done 10 films. I'm about to hopefully do my 11th one in a month's time.
Your 11th feature?
Not my own as a director, but to edit my 11th feature.
Wow.
And yeah, so hopefully, and again, it's some of that is, I've done some films which weren't great, but telling a story over the course of 2 hours is different to telling it over the course of 10 minutes. And so even if it didn't turn out as the best film perhaps you want it to be, just going through that process is a great learning experience. It's like like I say, the first film, the feature film that we did when we were at college is not great, for various reasons, but just going through that process was brilliant, because we kind of, we went through every stage of what you would have to do on a quote unquote professional set. Hopefully I'm doing better stuff now, but I'm still learning.
Definitely. I feel like you learn more from those projects that you look at and think, oh, that's not that great. I feel like you take more from it than the ones where you're like,
yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, the ones where you can see what you've. I mean, obviously, it's lovely when people say, "Oh, I really enjoyed that," or "that I really like that," or whatever. But in terms of like getting better at stuff, I think sometimes it's better to, like, my parents are very honest with me about my work. They like what they like, and they don't like what they don't like. And it's good to have people in your life who'll be able to tell you, "Oh, I'm not quite sure that works," and then for you to be able to go, "Yeah, you're right, and this is why." You can then learn and then take that on to the next thing. If you thought everything was brilliant, then you'd be a Kardashian, and no one wants that.
Yeah, definitely. This is probably the wrong year to ask this, but what does 2021 look like for you? What are you looking forward to doing for the rest of this year? Are there any passion projects that you've got in the pipeline that you're like, this is the year that I'm going to get it done?
I think 2021 will be a sort of a continuation of personal development more than anything. I think, I spent a lot of time in lockdown thinking about like what my priorities were, thinking about my own kind of internal things, I suppose, and how my work-life balance had led me down in a negative kind of area. So actually 2021, I think I'll probably work less than I have in previous years, because I understand now the balance that I need to kind of set to give myself a life outside of my work, because I think that's important. Even though you've got to kind of push and be relentless, you've also got to kind of be a bit gentler on yourself than perhaps I have been. I'm hopefully going to be doing more TV. I'm doing a couple of more short films, but I'm sort of going to limit the amount of time I spend on those sort of things. But if something comes along that I think is really good and I really enjoy it and I get on with the people, then I'll do it. I think I'm just going to be a bit more. I think 15 years ago I was like, I'll do anything, whereas now I'm at a different stage, I think, where I'm like, I'll do things for particular reasons. And if they don't fit into one of those, whether it's I really love it or it really pays well, or I get on with the people really well, if it's not those three things, then there's sort of no reason to do it. So yes, that's sort of what I think. Hopefully I'll lose a bit of weight, and although sitting at home in my pajamas all day is not
easy,
conducive to that.
Yeah.
No, but so I don't really feel negative about 2021. I feel more hopeful. I mean, as we record this, Biden has just been inaugurated, and it sounds so silly, but just having that really makes a difference to even us just across the pond.
It's a good start to the year.
How we see things. Yeah, exactly. You think, oh, the adults are back in charge. Do you know what I mean? It feels like we're not in this ridiculous circus, and I'm sure things will change and everyone will hate him after a couple of months, but for now it feels like there might be and with the vaccine and summer will be coming, and hopefully things will start improving. But life is what you make of it. A very good friend of mine, Nev Pierce, who is a filmmaker in his own right, and I've done 4 shorts with him, and he's one of my very good friends. He said something to me once which really resonated, and I think about most days, which is deal with the world the way it is, not the way you want it to be. And I think I think being able to control your reaction to how things are is really important, and dealing with it on a level playing field rather than being too idealistic, and stamping your feet and saying, why is it not like this? I think, being able to deal with things as they are, and moving forward, I think is a challenge, but I think it's the best way to deal with things.
It's very, very wise words. I'm in a
He's a
similar.
wise man. He's like an owl.
It doesn't sleep much either.
He lives in trees.
I'm very much in the same boat. I gave a lot of myself to work last year, and it made me very unhappy. And so towards the end of last year, I mean, I quite easily could have started my YouTube channel in January. I wanted to do it from September. I gave myself 2 months of thinking about it, doubting myself, going backwards and forwards. And I filmed my first videos in November, but I didn't put them up till December just because there was a lot going on. And I thought, no, rather than start the new year with this, I'm ready to end the new year with this. And I just made a promise to myself that I was going to put much more time into my writing, put much more time into doing YouTube, and whatever I do in terms of like my job, my happiness and my mental health has to come first, because it almost took a very, very bad turn. And it's only through sort of reminding myself of why I got into this industry in the first place that it didn't. And so yeah, I'm glad that you obviously said what you said. I'm in complete agreement. And yeah, sometimes you do have to take a step back and go, actually, I need to work a little less. I do need to be kinder to myself, because when you're working so much and you're trying to do your creative endeavors on the side, it can just be like, you haven't got time to rest. You haven't got time to chill. You have to just keep going. And that eventually, some days you just want to be like, do you know what? I just want to watch trash TV and do nothing.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, I literally, like this, I haven't had like a TV aerial connection for about 10 years, because I just never watched TV. The only times I ever watched TV is when I went home to my parents, and inevitably my mum would be watching Coronation Street or Emmerdale, which is fine for her. But and I wouldn't watch stuff on Netflix, and so people would talk about TV series, and it's because I was working all the time, and mentally I was so kind of frazzled by it. The last thing I really wanted to do was kind of watch more films and stuff. So I went most of last year without watching anything really, and already this year I made a conscious choice. It's like, well, this year I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more things, because I used to watch films all the time.
Yeah.
I used to work at a cinema, and my record was 9 films in a day. That's how many films I got to see at the cinema.
Wow.
I was there from like 7 o'clock in the morning until like 11:30 at night. But the so I didn't want to. I realised that I didn't want that time. My time is finite as far as I'm concerned. People believe different things, but I feel like we've got a limited time to do things, and I was spending a lot of it on sort of helping other people achieve their dreams, which is great, but I wasn't spending any time on improving myself, and my physical and mental health was kind of dwindling. And I just realized, you know what, why am I doing this? I used to love watching films, used to love watching TV. Why am I not doing that? Why am I spending, I'd work a full day and then come home into my edit suite at home, and work all evening on stuff. Some stuff I didn't care about or actively didn't like. And I just decided to change. So I literally got a TV box for the first time ever. Started watching TV series that I'd heard about but hadn't made the time to watch. And it's changed things for me a little bit, and I want to continue that. And it sounds crazy, just to say, oh, just watching TV is going to change. But what it is I spent so much time only focusing on work related stuff. So if it wasn't to do with work, then I didn't want to do it. Whereas there's no reason to do any of it. I'm just doing it because I enjoy it. And I think that's really important, to kind of do stuff that is purely for enjoyment. So
100%. Obviously, as a film and TV fan, are there any sort of franchises or properties that you look at and think, I'd love to work on that now or in
Yeah,
the future?
yeah. The big ones for me are Star Trek
Okay,
and Jurassic Park. Those are the two, because those are the ones that meant the most to me growing up. Star Trek is something that me and my family absolutely love. My dad and I were obsessed with it. Um, and Jurassic Park was like one of the first films I saw that really affected me. I was so terrified of it. I wrote this story on my website, but basically, I went to see it, and I was so frightened at one point that I had to leave the cinema, and
really?
so I left the cinema, but I couldn't go out into the foyer. So I was between the cinema and the foyer for about 2 hours, whilst hearing that little girl screaming at like velociraptors and whatever. And then my mom, who I'd gone to the cinema with, came out and said, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "Oh, I was too frightened. I couldn't go with it." And I didn't see the film for several years after that because I was so affected by it. And that really, to me, is the power of film, isn't it?
Definitely.
Is being able to kind of connect to that. And now it's like literally one of my favorite films. I absolutely love that film. Because it's wonder, it's excitement, it's transporting you from your daily life. Um, yeah, it's brilliant. So those are the two main ones, really. But then, there's I'd love to work on lots of different things. I love comedy, I love drama, I love sci-fi. I love lots of different things, and in a way, it's kind of slightly more difficult because I want to do so many different things. I think if I just said no, I only want to do Scandinavian drama, then that might be easier because I could just focus on doing that. But because I want to do all sorts of different things, maybe I spread myself too thin. I don't know, but time will tell, I suppose.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I think Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom shot over here, and I think Dominion was over here as well.
Yeah, I know the
So,
editor of the last one, and
oh really?
and it's just been. I think the trailer's out soon, and I'm so excited for it because the most recent films have not been. There's issues with them as films, and I don't think any of the films stand up to the very first one. But just seeing dinosaurs on screen and people interacting with them, and then you got the kind of social, political kind of storyline alongside that. I love all that kind of stuff. I really do. And in Jurassic Park, the T-Rex scene in the paddock is so brilliantly done. You could study that. You could spend a year studying that scene at film school because cinematography, the editing, the blocking, the directing, it's just brilliantly done, so brilliantly done. But because it's kind of an action adventure kind of thing, people sort of, I think that's one of the things with Spielberg is people forget how brilliant he is because his films are so entertaining. Is actually if he did something, people look at Schindler's List or whatever and think, oh yeah, that's an important film. That's it. That makes sense. But I think Jurassic Park is every bit as brilliant. It's just a different style of doing things. But yeah, I talk too much about that film.
Well, I'm not sure about Star Trek, but as I said about Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, it feels like Hollywood is coming over here in terms of the studio space that's been taken up. The productions that are coming over here, and obviously with the last two films being shot over here, I think you might get a chance at maybe working on a film like
That'd
that.
be good, wouldn't it? I'd love to. I'll go make tea for them. I don't mind.
I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too.
There could be short filmmakers watching this, thinking about getting in touch with editors, that sort of stuff. Are you available to work with emerging short filmmakers? And if so, how do they get in touch with you?
Like I say, I mean, I'm happy to work with kind of anyone really, but it's all about like first and foremost the script, but also the people, their passion, their vision, understanding what they want to do. And so I'm really open to working with, I regularly work with, new filmmakers who then become long-term collaborators. It's kind of how this business works really, is you build relationships with, not in a Machiavellian, I'm going to network with everybody kind of way, but, you certainly as an editor, you are reliant on other people to generate material for you to work on. So I'm always looking to work with really good people. At the moment, as we speak, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I am Jim Page. I'm actually, weirdly, I'm changing my professional name back to my birthday, which is James Page. The reason
Okay.
being is there was a very well established, quite old Hollywood film editor called Jim Page,
Oh no.
and and the problem is I've occasionally been mistaken for him, and it's always a very depressing conversation to have. It's like, well, actually, no, I'm not the guy who edited that really amazing, massive, big budget film. I'm the guy from Britain, and so everyone knows me as Jim, and I've been Jim for a long time now. But I'm eventually my social media and everything in my website will change to James. But for now, Jim Page. I am Jim Page on Twitter. I'm sure you can put a link in the YouTube
Yeah,
as well,
absolutely.
and my website is jimpage.co.uk. And yeah, I'd love to hear from people.
Cool. Well, yeah, as Jim said, we will put all of his information down in the description, as well as a few links here and there. Jim, thank you very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. This has been an illuminating discussion. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Guys at home, if you've enjoyed this, let me know. I want to do more videos like this. I want to speak to more people. I want to have more of these conversations. Thank you very much again, Jim. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.